Hey guys, and welcome to 5 Slurred Minutes. I'm in the wrong spot. I'm gonna move to over here, see if that helps. And it doesn't really. Well, basically, what I'm trying to get to is a place with you, not so super dark. I guess that's a little better. Welcome. My apologies for the delay. As I mentioned on the. Goodness gracious. As I mentioned in the chat, I get caught up telling my son a story about. So, look, I won't go too deep down this rabbit hole because I realize that none of y'all probably particularly care about the way I treat my kids, I guess. It sounds dark. But he gets to hear a story every night, and he gets to kind of create the story, and most of it comes from whatever he watched that day. And the last couple of days, he's been watching a lot of Power Rangers and things like that. So I don't know where the fuck Spider-Man came from, but there is Whiskey Soze. Of course, my friend, we were already a couple deep. My wife made some homemade, and you're about to see a disturbing amount of my house. So my apologies to everybody. This is, those of you that don't have kids, this is life with kids, guys. Plates, toys, everywhere. But she made homemade margaritas for dinner, and so there's been margaritas, there's been beer, there's been whiskey, all kinds of stuff deep. So no worries, this will be, and that's my dog, see here in the background. Can you talk about the shirt? Yeah, sure, man. So the shirt, Noni's, it's a bar right down the street in Atlanta that is owned by some Italian family. They also make ridiculous sandwiches. They have the best sandwiches in the city, in my opinion. That's what they stretch, but they're really good sandwiches. It's also a great bar. It's literally like 3 blocks down the road from my house. No Knees is the name for, I think, the person's grandma, and then obviously No Knees in the shirt. Asked and answered, my man. So look, I wanted to do these more frequently, but it doesn't always lend itself to that with my lifestyle and my work schedule and kids and shit. So I'm getting that as soon as I can. But, we're about 6 of the way through the season right now. We're catching up. We're getting here, about 32 games in for most of us, 30 games, somewhere in that range. So it felt like a good time to do another catch-up series. And we've actually had some big shakeups in the league. So I wanted to take some time. And I'm probably about to get yelled at by my wife because I'm right below my daughter's room. What is a Mintis? Hey, you know what, Ryan? Fuck off, bud. How about that? But it's a great question. I don't know what a Mintis is. And I just wanted to talk about some things, that have been different. I'm on a different computer. I'm not in my work shed, my work computer. My phone is ringing. Make sure it's not my wife yelling at me to tell me that I'm being too loud. It's not. It's my brother. Okay. So let's get into it. Look, you guys have put a couple questions over to me. I did a little bit of prep work when I could earlier, just to get, so we're not going to have like a opening day level of unpreparedness. And obviously I'm following the league much closer now than I was during the spring training. So I have some background into what these things are. But the first thing I want to talk about was something that I actually had on my own list. And I think it's an interesting story. Because to me, this team was a team that I had huge hopes for. They've been coming off back-to-back seasons. I've covered them pretty extensively. I talked about the Baltimore Orioles in my preseason. Look at this shit, by the way. Sorry, before we even get into it, look at this. There's just stickers everywhere. We talked about them, right? Because they're a team that under the ownership of Andy has been an incredibly consistent team. They've done very well. 89 wins to 102, 73. Wins the year before him, making that jump into a winning year and then winning the division back to back was very impressive. And if you look at the Orioles this year and you start to wonder, hey, what's the reason for the slow start? I mean, it's twofold, right? And it's very, very clear. If you look at this team up and down, they are not scoring runs, despite the fact that they're getting on base at a decent clip, right? The top 5 in batting average, top 10 in OBP, which is not super impressive, but it's not terrible, right? it doesn't really necessitate an 11-21 team. But when you couple the fact that they're not knocking the people that are getting on base with the fact that they can't prevent runs being scored, they're 12th in runs against in the American League, which, you know, is definitely the higher scoring of the two leagues, 150 runs scored. It's just not going to work out if you look at this in the long run. So what's not working for them? It's their four-man rotation. It's the opener style that the Orioles have adopted essentially here, right? Steve White has not been great. Brady Aiken has struggled tremendously. His ERA is close to 6. He's 1-5. Now, granted, there's a lot you can argue about a win-loss record. What's that really worth and things like that. But a 6 ERA tells a damning story for a guy. While only 22 is supposed to be the anchor of this essentially the anchor of this goddamn rotation. So as you see, there is whiskey. You know, he's averaging a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio, which is not what you're looking for a guy with the kind of stuff that Brady Aiken has, the kind of pedigree a guy like Brady Aiken has. And so when I look at this team and I wonder why are they struggling, which I don't wonder, mind you, because even though I picked them to win the AL East, I still think they'll make a comeback here and be relevant. This is what paints the picture. Right? Brady Aiken struggling as bad as he has. Juan Romero has been a fucking train wreck. Now, granted, he's only pitched in 2 games, right? He started the season down in AAA. He pitched great in AAA, and he's come up and he's been a disaster, allowing 18 hits and 15 runs over 10 innings. That's not what you're looking for. Right? Now, his BABIP's been really high. But again, that speaks to the fact that Baltimore's not been playing great defense. Now, they're not the worst defensive team in the American League, but they've not been playing spectacular defense, which is another thing. Well, they didn't necessarily rely on it. You got to do a lot of things right to make the way the Baltimore Orioles play work. And not playing good defense is not something that's going to help them, right? So if you couple the fact that Steve White, now you can talk about his skill set all you want. The dude's got a sick knuckleball. It's a unique pitch in today's game, especially in MLB Pro. I think there's only 2 people in the league right now that throw the knuckleball. Steve White, and I forget the other guy's name. They actually were both former Braves at one point. But the other fella is not coming to mind at the moment. I'm sure he'll pop into my head here later. But Steve White was spectacular last year. He threw 244 innings. Now, granted, he's on his way to a long stretch of this year. He's thrown 50 innings already through 7 starts. And he's not performing that much worse than he was last year. Again, the big difference now is that when people are making contact with the ball, it's landing on green grass and not in the glove. Right? So when you look at the Orioles, that's one of the biggest problems. We can talk about their offense all day long. I think that has to correct itself, right? You don't get as many hits as they've gotten and struggle as badly as they have with runners in scoring position on a consistent basis. That turns itself around. They're not a young team. It's not like there's a bunch of rookies out there that maybe are getting cold feet when there's runners on base. It's just that they're struggling a little bit. I think the offense is going to come around. But if the defense, if the pitching doesn't really come around as well, I don't know that really matters, right? John Gass has just stepped up. He pitched for them a couple times last year. He's coming in to replace the injured Marcus Stroman, who just went down. So he's been up for about 3 months, and he was actually up to a great start. He was the one pitcher who was really pitching well for them from the starting perspective. Now, there's a couple guys in the pen that have been okay, but because the Baltimore Orioles rely so heavily on their pen, if everyone's not performing well, it's going to be a problem. So, we can talk circles around this all day long. But when you want to think about what's wrong with the Baltimore Orioles, why are they struggling the way they're struggling? That's the story right there. They cannot knock runs when people get on base, and they're getting on base at a fine clip. The OBP is low, so they're not drawing a lot of walks, especially when you look at the fact that they're top 5 in average, and they're sitting in 8th in OBP with about a 60% difference in the fact in the batting average and OBP. That's not exactly what you're looking for from the whole team. They're not walking as much as they should. But even when people are getting on base, they're not knocking them in, right? So that's a big problem for the Orioles. I think that problem gets solved, but I think if the pitching doesn't figure itself out, they may have dug themselves too deep of a hole. That sounds silly, a 1/6 of the way into a season. But the Rays have been spectacular. We will talk about that. A 10-game win streak. We will 100% talk about the Tampa Bay Rays here in a second. The Royals, good God. The Jays have finally woken up, right? So they're back in the mix of things. Steve Graham of the Cubs. Thank you very much, Mitch. Sorry, I'm on a different screen. It's a little one, so I can't always see when you are saying something. I'm going to keep checking, so I do appreciate you chiming in, bud. Steve Graham of the Cubs is the other knuckleballer. again, the Jays have woken up, right? They've gone 7-3 over their last 10. They've actually lost their last 3, so they were sitting at 18-10 at one point, which is exactly where you would have thought the Jays would have been 28 games in. The Red Sox, despite the fact that they've cooled off a little bit, they've been 4-6. They've won 3 in a row, so they're still sitting here at 16-7, 17-16. Like, maybe they can make something of this. The Yankees experiment seems to be a failure. I heard some rumblings about some deals going down the other day between the Yankees and somebody, and it just seemed to break down because the Yankees don't have a lot to offer. They've got big contracts, excessive personalities, nothing depth on the farm. They've got a lot of money to spend, but like, what is that worth in this league necessarily? Because free agents don't hit the market. And that's something we can talk about in another frame, but like, you're not going to have a situation in MLB Pro where a guy like Bryce Harper and a guy like Manny Machado hit the free agent market at the same time. A guy like Dallas Keuchel would never be unsigned to this point. Craig Kimbrell would never be unsigned to this point. The biggest comparison you can see to that is maybe somebody like Heath Bell, who was unsigned for a long time before his contract demands fell down. Now, Keith Bell is nowhere near a closer that Craig Kimbrell is, but again, it's an interesting storyline to look at. And I don't know what I'm talking about. That league doesn't exist. MLB Pro is all that matters. But it's just an interesting thing to look at when you think about the Yankees and a guy as bold as Rhett having control of them. How can he be bold when there's nothing to do? Because nobody's going to want the pieces he has to offer, at least as far as I can tell right now. And there's nobody to go out and spend that money on. So anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there. But I guess the point was that the Orioles have dug themselves a very deep hole right now. They're still only 8 games back, which doesn't seem insurmountable at this point. But, man, if this staff and this bullpen doesn't figure it out, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. I don't know how long I just spent on the Orioles. It was longer than I intended. Fucking 12 minutes. Okay, Jesus hell. Listen, that's the end of my coverage on the Orioles. I feel bad because my man's never up when I do all this coverage, and I talk about the Orioles a lot. But I think he watches later, so, whatever. Oh, hey, Ryan. No, that's not Ryan. Sorry, Ryan. It is Ryan, but Ryan's not the Orioles anymore. Ryan is Mariners? Marlins. Fuck, guys. Okay, so that is what is wrong in Baltimore. And to me, that's a really interesting storyline. Again, I don't want to go down another tangent on this because, I am sitting campfire style, bud. And that's, I guess, a crotch shot, so I apologize for that. But I am definitely sitting camp style. I'm not used to this, I usually stand, actually, when I do that. Well, I guess I sit in the closet, but I would prefer to, when I do things like this, when I play video games, when I look at our team, I will stand. Yeah, I know, Ryan. No, that's actually a fair criticism. It's actually mild for how bad that mistake was. But yes, I am sitting Indian style or campfire style, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I know, bud. All right, listen. So let's move on before this really spirals out of control. This is something that nobody sent in, but it's something I think needs to be talked about, and it's the fact that we may be seeing a change in the guard of the best team in baseball. And honestly, we may start to be seeing a shift away from the best league in baseball. Now, that is a stretch. So let's not go down that road yet because that's just me being hyperbolic. But in reality, I think we can have a real conversation about, does the best team in baseball still rely on the American League West? And I think a lot of you would look at me and say, yes. Yes, they do. And as much as Justin Kaiser, whatever, would have you believe that the Mariners may be the best team in baseball, I would posit that maybe it's the Rockies. Now, if you look at them statistically, they're still very much behind the Angels. You look at them runs scored, it's 183 to 201, right? 183 to 201 is a pretty big disparity this early in the season. Their average is pretty close. Their OBP is fairly close. When you look at home runs, the Angels and the Rockies are actually tied dead on 40 to 40. The big difference here, which is the surprising part, is that the Rockies pitching staff has been much better than the Angels has. And you can argue, OTP, MLB Pro, does not necessarily allow us to dig as deep into the statistical analysis as if we had a full-on media presence outside of just me, maybe, allows us to. But if you look at, they're just straight numbers versus numbers. Starter ERA for the Rockies is sitting just below 3 at 2.97. For the Angels, you're sitting at 4.23. Bullpen for the Angels is at 258. Very good, mind you. And the Rockies is at 318. So they kind of flip here, but the difference really is the Rockies pitching staff is significantly more talented, statistically speaking. And again, we can't really go and adjust for competition at this point because I don't have the analysis to do it. But when you look up and down the Manuel Reyes, right? You can make an argument if Hughes belongs on the top of this rotation or not. But guys like Craig Cooper, who I'm a big fan of. Craig Cooper is a spectacularly talented individual. Ronald Dunham, again, very talented. Judd Graham, also incredibly talented. The big difference between those four guys, Phil Hughes excluded, and guys like Ryan Copeland, talented. Don't get me wrong. Jordan Lyles, talented. Brandon Morrow, yeah. Kyle Funkhauser, probably the best of the four so far, and a guy like Kevin Gausman. His age. Funkhauser's in his mid-20s. Gausman's 28 or so. But the age of the Angels pitching staff is significantly higher than the age of the Rockies pitching staff. And the Rockies pitching staff is already pitching at a much higher level. Now, you can also make an argument that the Mariners, it's not even a fucking argument at this point. The Mariners have the best pitching staff in baseball, bar none. The Reds have a good one, sure, but I think the only person actually voted for the Reds in the poll I put out the other day was the Reds. And God bless Scott, the man has unwavering confidence in his team despite a 1-9 slide here. Still in second place in that division. God help him because the fucking Cardinals are back to being what they should be. But, it's just an interesting point. I think the Rockies have a legitimate case here because I don't know that their offense is necessarily producing at the level that they're capable of. And that's saying a lot considering they are the top offense in the National League across most measurable standards. They're second in home runs. I mean, second by 2 home runs to the Braves, who, Keon Barnum is not going to hit 60 home runs. He's going to slow down. So I think the Rockies finish at the top of the league here. Yeah, I don't think Ryan's listening. If he was, he'd be chiming in a lot. Because as we all know, and this is another little interesting wrinkle to this league, we don't have a lot of competitions between brethren, usually from the GM perspective. Sometimes you get the Eli Payton competition. We have 2 competing general managers who are brethren, and that's very interesting to me. But I think if you look at the Rockies from a league neutral perspective and look up and down this roster, I think they have a real strong case to be the best team in the league. And that's really interesting to me because coming into this season, there was a lot of talk about the Dodgers, a lot of talk about the Giants. And do not get me wrong, this division, the National League West, which has historically been a joke, is incredibly impressive this year with the fact that the Giants and the Dodgers are both sitting with 20 wins at this point and are 3 games back at the least of the Rockies. But I think the Rockies are the best team in baseball. Jeb McKinley is playing like the MVP candidate that he is. Will Myers is playing out of his fucking mind. Ramon Zaragoza is doing exactly what you thought he would do. Hit about 250 with just mashing home runs. Carlos Correa is probably trending a little higher than you expect from a power, aspect for him. But the guy's a stud. He's a kid that I think was underrated in St. Louis and was let go cheaper than he should have been. He was somebody that I really, really wanted to see in a Braves uniform. He's been in Colorado for 2 years. He's gotten better. From 2017 to 2018 to 2019, he has consistently improved. He's actually already hit more home runs this year than he hit all of last year, despite starting 155 games. You heard that right. In 33 games in 2019, Carlos Correa has hit more home runs than he hit in the 155 starts in 2018. Somebody drug test this kid. I smell another Zing Zhu Wong. Ooh. Let's just brush past that one, guys, because that was a little rough. PED suspension is coming here. But this is my point, right? The Rockies are incredibly impressive. And yes, there's some guys performing out of their mind. Carlos Correa is not going to sustain that home run rate. Jed McKinley, as good as he is not going to hit 371 over the season, nor is Will Myers. But you got to figure Hideki Abe will continue to get on base. As a quick clip. Guys like Jock Peterson playing very well. If they can get any kind of production out of the corner here, Mitchell Walding, as much as he's an interesting player, is probably not somebody that the Rockies need to have in this lineup long term. A guy, again, like Joshua McGee, interesting player, not somebody a competing team needs to have in this situation. So when you look back maybe on the trade that the Rockies made earlier this season, which maybe is a big piece of why they've been so successful. Dennis Moore has been killer in that rotation. Becky Abe has been killer at the top of this lineup. Two things that the Braves always hoped these two guys would be. It does leave a hole for them at third base where they dealt a guy like Marvin Groom, right? And Groom, maybe not the best defensive third baseman, but he's hitting very well in AAA on Gwinnett, and he's a guy that could step in and probably be a better fit for them at third base. So I think we talked about third base acquisitions for a different team. Maybe it was the Rockies a couple weeks ago. If I'm the leader of the Rockies team, Ryan, I'm going out and I'm searching out a third baseman right now. And there's plenty to be had. The Reds are a disaster, and they have a couple talented third basemen on that roster. There's a couple other teams out there that are not performing particularly well that have third basemen available. I would recommend they go find somebody, and a second baseman to boot, which is much harder, mind you. But still, they're out there to be had. Go look for somebody, because I think the Rockies are one piece away from being a legit, no-holds-barred, unquestioned best team in baseball. And I think they can be an interesting hi, Ryan. Or hi. No, wait, you're Ryan. What's your brother's name? Who's the other? Eddie. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. My bad, man. This whole thing's been directed at Eddie. Eddie, hopefully you were paying attention because I'm talking about your team, not because I mentioned your brother's name. That seems hard. All right. Well. Okay. Oh, this is actually my work computer. I'm getting a work Slack. So yeah, that's my story on Colorado, guys. I mean, look, it's probably not as popular as an opinion as it should be, even though somebody like our assistant commissioner Justin does seem to share the thought. No, that's not happening. Anyway, I think the Rockies are the best team in baseball, and I think the Angels definitely have something to say about it. We've kind of, I mean, you're looking at the Angels right now as basically like the LeBron James-led team of whoever it is in the NBA, because the NBA playoffs are going on. It's actually going on in the other room. I think we take for granted how great the Angels have been over the last decade, half decade, however long this league's been going on. So it's easy to kind of overlook the continued success they've had and move on to the next sexy thing. But to me, that's the Rockies right now, and then they're spectacular. So we're going to move on from that because I have a couple things I want to talk about. And as I go on longer, I tend to just drone on and on. Did I say disaster? I don't remember. You can't hold me liable to these things, bud. I've been drinking. Let's move to a question that actually got proposed a couple of different times, and that's the direction for our newest arrivals. And it's not always our newest arrivals, it's the new people in new situations. So Jack has moved from the Milwaukee Brewers, coming off a division title, to the Philadelphia Phillies, who sit now at 10-20 at the bottom of a division that historically has been incredibly impressive and historically has been the best division in the National League. Now, you can make an argument. I don't even know if it's an argument anymore that they're not the best division in the National League anymore. I think that's the National League West. The Central definitely seems to have taken a step back, as the Reds do not seem to be bouncing back from what everyone thought last year was just a fluke disaster of an injury-riddled season. Well, you're looking at them right now, not necessarily struggling from the injuries they did before, but still sitting at 14-18. And while they struggle and the Brewers struggle, guess who's not struggling? The St. Louis Cardinals. They now hold a 10.5 game lead. And to put that into perspective, nobody else has more than a 3-game lead in their division right now. And they're at 10.5. So if you want to talk about how great the National League Central is, how great the Cardinals are sitting at right now in the National League Central. 10.5 game lead in May is it's gotta be a good feeling. And yeah, I mean, I would agree, right? The National League East does beat up on itself a little bit, but I mean, you can say that all you want. I mean, I just don't know that this division's as good. Now, the Mets pitching has as good as it ever been. Their starter's ERA is around 2. Their defensive efficiency is spectacular. Their offense is struggling, and I don't think it's going to get much better. The Marlins are a team that continuously overachieve. What am I supposed to be talking about right now? Directions and new GMs. I got a little distracted because the NL East is my league. But the Marlins are a team that is doing everything well enough. They're not really spectacular at anything, but they're doing everything well enough to be as good as they are. And I think that they are a surprise, feel-good story to this point in the year. But again, I don't know that they're sustainable. And if you look at the Braves, a team that has been very good the last couple of years, their bullpen sucks. Their defense sucks. They're not running like they were last year. This is another question that got asked, and it's a little personal to me because they wanted to hear the Desi Wilson story. And I think that's one that's worth exploring someday. I don't know that we'll get to it today, but the loss of Desi Wilson in Atlanta has been disastrous. And you want to talk about disasters? You talk about the Reds. That has been a monstrous effect on this Braves team, a team that, by all accounts, only got better at the major league. You can talk about their farm system all you want, but by all accounts, got better at the major league level. And it's been worse this year with no sign of improvement. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that Tyrone Boykin is nowhere near the manager that Desi Wilson is. And when you want to talk about really how he got away, why did he go from Atlanta to Colorado? Who, by the way, we just spent 10 minutes talking about why they're the best team in baseball. It's not a story of, oh, they didn't think he could do it anymore. It's not a story of they wanted him gone. It's a story of incompetence from a fucking front office. This is a story of the front office general manager was raising 2 goddamn children and forgot to look at the fucking contracts, and his contract expired accidentally because I think that the GM thought he had him signed long term, and he didn't, and he walked. And I didn't realize it. As a fan, much as a GM. Anyway. That whole story will come out one day. Blow it up, Scott. That whole story will come out one day. It's not today for it. Today we're going to talk about the direction for these new GMs. And I think the direction that some of these guys take is very different. And when I say that, I really think that there's 2 different directions that they're going to go in here. I think there's one GM that needs to stay the course and make a run at this thing. I think there's 2 that need to realize where they are, and I think that they're very close to that. So let's start with the 2 that need to kind of realize their place in the league. And I don't know their names. Maybe I can find it on the game. Yeah, so let's start with GM Greg Woodhour, who is not in Slack. So I sincerely doubt he's up watching this, especially considering he just joined the league. If he is, man, kudos to you. Greg took over the Pirates. And the Pirates are a team that they're just not good. Right. They're one of the teams that has never won a division title. We've talked about this a couple of different times. They're one of the teams that's never made the playoffs and never be pro. And that was the article I wanted to write. I'm going to write that down. There's a bunch of teams in this league that have never made the playoffs. And I think it'd be a really interesting look at those teams. But the Pirates are one of those teams that are essentially, thank you, bud, consistently terrible. Their offense is just bad. I mean, they're ranked almost dead last in everything outside of home runs, which is a fluke, and it's being carried by Josh Bell, this poor kid's talent is just being massively wasted. And a guy like Tyler Moore, who doesn't do anything but hit home runs. He's hitting 270 right now. There's no fucking way that continues. This dude's going to hit 220 by the end of the year. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Mitch. The NOS is pretty ridiculously loaded. Again, that's the point I was making, right? So I think if you're Greg and you're looking at this team, you're looking at a rebuild. I mean, it's been a rebuild. It's consistently been a rebuild for years. The problem is, I don't know if there's anything to build on, right? They're outside the top 10 in OTP rankings for their system. If you look at really who's on the farm right now, who's going to be exciting for you, who are you looking at as a potential fan to look at? There's a couple guys. There's not a lot, right? You're looking at a guy like Brandon Gill, who was drafted in 2018 as the 8th overall pick, plays third base. He's interesting. Is he a guaranteed slam dunk? No. And that's what you need if you're looking at this thing. You're looking at a guy like Lance Hartgraves. Interesting. Doesn't call a great game, but his bat's useful enough. You're looking at a guy like Francisco Gonzalez. Again, doesn't play great defense, but his bat's interesting. You're looking at a lot of guys who are question marks. And I don't really see anyone when you look up and down this system. Pedro Jimenez, interesting. Throws the ball incredibly hard. Could have some nasty stuff. Throws 4+ pitches. Maybe. But he's 19. The Pirates are nowhere close. So when you look at this team, you're thinking rebuild, right? You're thinking this has to get torn down and done again. How do they do that? It's got to be through the draft because there's nobody here that's going to be particularly valuable in a trade. Tink Jones should have been dealt 3 years ago, right? He's 30 years old now. He's heading into a free agency season. He strikes out too much. He doesn't walk. He's hitting 190. I mean, yeah, he's an interesting player, but like you're not going to get the haul you could have got for him 3 years ago. You know, you've got a guy like Josh Bell, who again has been the constant talk of rumors, not signed long term, heading into arbitration, having the worst year of his career so far. Should have been dealt a couple of years ago. Plays decent. Again, you're going to get a return for Josh Bell. Not the haul you should, but you're going to get something back for him. You're going to get something back for Tink. You can probably go out and deal a guy like Carlos Meza. But if I'm Greg, I am flipping the fucking switch right now, and everyone is gone. Fire sale. Don't undersell. Fire sale. Hey, come on. Will you bring Alex Bregman back off the fucking DL, please? The guy's ready to come back. He's sinusitis. He's back. Bring him on the damn field. Anyway, the Pirates are a team that frustrates me because there's pieces. Now that I'm looking at this, there are pieces here. They should restart. Don't worry, we'll get to that. Ghost Man always shows up. He never says anything, but he shows up. I think that was pretty obvious, right? If you thought about the Pirates and you thought about Greg's chances to compete this season or next season or the year after that, you probably knew they were slim. And that's the problem. Can we get somebody to come in and take over this job and stick long term? I hope so, man. I hope Greg's the guy. I hope he sticks around. I hope he takes a look at the pieces he has in the Major League team, deals them all off. Follow your man in Arizona. Follow your guy, Matt Wells, out in Houston. They've both done a massive rebuild. Their team's going to be disgusting in a couple of years. That can be you. It'll take minimal management at this point, but, you know, it'd be nice to see. Yeah, I mean, the Reds should move Arenado. 1,000%. I agree. Let's move on to the next team, right? The next one would be the Brewers being taken over by Cole Seltzer, 29-year-old American in his first season managing here. A lot of Americans in this league. Very few folks. We have Aiden. We have Andy. A couple Canadians. I think Mitch is a Canadian. Anyway, he took over the Brewers, a team that, you know what, I went out of order. I wanted to talk about the two teams I thought should give it up. I think the Brewers are the one team that shouldn't. I like what the Brewers have. I think they've been off to a worse start than they're capable of. Their pitching staff is a disaster, right? Shelby Miller's fine. Peralta's okay. Peralta, Jungmann, Flores, no, you're not going to compete with that. Addison Reed, Bobby Jenks, they've got a decent pen. They've been performing less than they're capable of. They need pitching help. And I think the Brewers are capable of going out and getting pitching help because they have 4 very talented outfielders. Jose Gonzalez, Esteban Hernandez, Juan Sanchez, Ryan Braun. And to date, Jack, who now runs the Phillies, has been hesitant to deal any of them. And I agree with him on Esteban Hernandez. You're never going to get, well, I mean, Hernandez probably isn't the one I'm looking at when I'm looking at somebody you're not going to get fair value for. It's Jose Gonzalez. You're never going to get fair value for Jose Gonzalez. You need to sign this dude long term. I mean, Cole Seltzer did inherit probably the most interesting team, most interesting player. Very Canadian, yeah. Eh? He's one of the most interesting players in the league. So Jose Gonzalez needs to stay. Ryan Braun probably should have been dealt 3 years ago. Esteban Hernandez could probably be dealt for the right price. Juan Sanchez could probably be dealt. You don't need to deal all of them, but you probably have to deal something because you have to go get a stopper. Shelby Miller is a very good pitcher, but he's not the ace you want. He's a 2. He's a 3. If they can take a couple of these guys and pair them with Yusuke Mori, maybe down there in the minors, who's a very interesting piece. Somebody like Don Adams, who is less interesting but could probably still get something done. Daniel McCormick's an interesting bat there in the minors. Pair a couple of these guys with a bat. go get him. Go get Norton. I think the Brewers can make a run here to a wild card spot. Do I think they'll chase down the Cardinals? No, because I made it clear since the start of the season the Cardinals are going to win this division. But I think the Brewers are a team. Oh, this is horse shit. All right, this is horse shit right here from Jack, because I know for a fact that my favorite team, the Atlanta Braves, came to the Milwaukee Brewers, to the GM before Jack took over and when Jack was there, and inquired on Ryan Braun, and it just wasn't going to happen, right? Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it's the no trade clause, but whatever it was, I know that there was seriously interest. Seriously? There was interest in him, and he just was not being moved. Now, I'm being told he's rejected every trade that's been offered to him, which I do remember happening. Was he ever trying to do? Did he ever try to get traded to a winner? Was he ever offered to a team that was winning at the moment? Because maybe he was not wanting to be traded to a team that wasn't in first place. I don't know. I wouldn't want to go play for Red either. All right, also Canadian, mind you. Anyway, this wasn't supposed to be an attack on Jack. Jack, I apologize, man. I think you did a great job with the Brewers. I think they're a very interesting team. But they're the team I don't want to see give up. I want to see them make a move. I want to see them go get a pitcher and try to make a dig out of this fucking hole, because the Reds, as much as I like what Scott tries to do and the effort he puts into his team, they're seeming to show that they're just not capable of this. And I think it's coming through this year. If the Brewers can put something on the mound that's better than Shelby Miller, I think they can make a run here and they can go, I don't know, maybe get that wild card spot. Again, we've talked about how great the NL West is this year, and the National League East is always probably going to account for one of those spots between the Braves and the Mets, and now with the Marlins jumping into the mix here. Maybe it's not in the cards for them, but I think they can make it interesting, and I'd love to see an interesting season in Milwaukee rather than them toss it all away or just sit pat and be subpar. My dog is very hungry, apparently. Dempsey, you hungry? Yeah, they both stood up. They'll be fine for another couple minutes. That leaves us with the last team, right? Uh-oh. There's been a lot of talk here. Fun fact, if you want to trade someone with a no-trade clause, the commissioners can let you know which teams the player will accept a non-trade clause. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, that is fascinating. Yeah, Ryan, I talked about that, bud. I know why you're barely above 500. We'll talk about the Marlins another day. They're not really on the docket. The last one would be the Phillies, and we don't have to go down the line here because we just talked about Jack. This is Jack's current team in the National League East, currently sitting 8.5 back of the Mets, 6 back or so of the Marlins and the Braves. The Phillies are what they've always been, a team that can pitch well, but they can't hit. And I think when you look at them right now, their pitching, which is their one saving grace, is not stepping up. Now, Sean Gilmartin has been fine, but Beachy's been rough. Bad Peacock has been okay, but you're not expecting that out of Peacock. And Mike Montgomery has not been great either. Now, Magana, is that how you'd say that? Has been great in his first real full season here. Yeah, I'm president of the Haters Club, man. I don't think the Phillies have what it takes this year to compete. They've got some interesting young pieces on the offense, but Felicio Roxa, I don't know why they went back out and got him. He did nothing but prove year over year that he couldn't hit in Philly. He couldn't do it, right? For years they had him set up, and he couldn't hit. And then he went to Kansas City, and he actually hit fine. And he went to Oakland, and he sucked. And then he came back to Philly and hit fine last year. And now he's off to a terrible start again. Felicio Roxa can't hit in Philadelphia. He needs to go somewhere else. And hopefully it's back to Kansas City because he hit great in Kansas City. I'd love to see him get some more play. And he's a guy that I've liked a lot. Oh, his defense is just so intriguing from a watching him play perspective. I'd love to see him be able to hit enough to stay into a lineup. And the Phillies were committed to him. They're going to keep him in the lineup, but he just needs to get out of Philadelphia. He can't hit there. He can't handle the fans or something. And that's my thought on Philly, right? They don't need to blow anything up. They just need to be patient. Let some of these kids down on the farm come up and maybe go out and get another bat if they can, a young bat, mind you. Don't go get somebody like Pablo Sandoval or some of these other older guys that are being waved around as trade pieces. Go get a good, talented young kid with a stick. Let's see if you can make something happen in a couple of years, because this year's not the year for the Phillies. Right, so there's the direction for the other three guys. How long have I been going? $40 minutes. Okay. Yeah, Arenado would be a great fit there. Yeah, I love the Rockies. I think they're great. No shame here. There was a player I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if I'll be able to find this person because it was a couple days ago when I was looking at this. And I'm going to try really hard real quickly to find this person again. Was it him? Yeah. Yeah. Look, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about specific players, but when I talk about bullpens and why they're so frustrating, I think as baseball fans, we all understand the fluctuating nature of a bullpen and how one person can be, you can be the best pitcher in baseball one year and then you can be the worst the next year. We need to talk about Ben Rowan real quick, guys. Ben Rowan is a guy born and raised in a college town in Virginia who has been the closer for Texas going on 3 years now. I mean, it may be longer than that. He started being the closer at least part-time in 2014. He probably got more of a full-time job in 2015, 2016, so on and so forth. He's 30 years old. He throws right-handed thrower. He throws low 90s. Nothing spectacular about what he does. He has 2 pitches, a fastball and a changeup. 2 pitches. Let me repeat that. A fastball and a changeup for a 30-year-old right-hander who has nothing impressive about what he does and does not throw the ball very hard. If you're at your game right now, if you have access to statistics, go look at Ben Rowan real quick. I'm going to pause, and I'm going to finish this. And actually, I'm going to pause a little longer. I'm going to get a beer out of the fridge. Because nothing says good radio like not being on the radio. Hopefully you all had a chance to look. Let's see. Oh, man. So's he getting a beer? Okay. You've all looked at Ben Rowan. Hopefully a lot of you just looked at his statistics or his ratings. Good, good. Thank you, Ryan. Did anybody look at his statistics for the year? He's appeared in 16 games, pitched in 17 innings, allowed 0 runs. 0 runs. 14 saves and 16 appearances, 0 losses, 14 saves and 17 innings, 16 appearances, 0 runs. Only walked 2. And he has a BABIP of 327. The guy, when he does get hit, which isn't often, although he has allowed 18 hits over 17 innings, so he's averaging over a hit in appearance, so it's not like he's keeping everybody off base here, not slamming the door shut. 0 runs allowed, 14 saves. This is the statistical bullshit. Okay. I don't like seeing my picture in the background. That really creeps me out. But this is the statistical bullshit that you talk about when you think about bullpens. Why? Why is he succeeding the way he's succeeding? You know what I mean? Like, why is he the guy leading the American League in saves right now when he's proven to be nothing but average? He has seemingly nothing special about him when you watch him throw the ball. It's nothing crazy out there. And yet he's sitting here damn near perfect. I don't know. It's wild to me. You can talk about a guy like Paul Erickson, who's having a very similar season, 14 games pitched, 14 innings. He struck out 19 to date. Still hasn't allowed a run with 8 saves and a win. Like, yeah, just as impressive. But I expect it from. The dude has a nasty curveball that drops off the face of the fucking earth. He has ridiculous stuff. He also has an electric fastball. He drives the ball down on his fastball and is constantly forcing ground out. So I expect this out of Paul Erickson, right? A guy like Jordan Walden. Again, an older guy, still hasn't allowed a run. A couple of these guys still exist out there. 13 games he's pitched, 16 innings. He struck out 20 24. So I wanted to talk real quickly. Ben Rowan's the guy that started me down this road, but there's a couple guys we need to talk about here. Right? Jordan Walden down in Tampa Bay has arguably been better than fucking Ben Rowan is. And Ben Rowan blows my mind. So, I guess this whole thing, maybe this was an exercise in, let's watch his throw. Hey, you know what, Jack? Fuck yourself. I'm trying to pretend like this is something that's not. This whole thought exercise started as a frustration behind why my Braves bullpen sucks so bad. And I started to realize that, maybe the guys that the Braves have put out there haven't been very good, but it's kind of a crapshoot. My wife just came downstairs, so she's going to laugh at me for doing a podcast about a fake baseball league. But it's frustrating to look this up and down and look at a guy like Ben Rowan being as effective as he is. What's interesting, actually, to this point, and it's probably not necessary information, or I don't know how accurate this is. Am I looking at this right? There has not been a single shutout to date. Nobody's throwing a complete game. Seems sad. Megan, don't clean that stuff up while I'm doing this. Let me finish first, so I'm not sitting here doing dumb things while you're cleaning the house. No, well, let me finish up and then I'll do it. But don't. No, I know. There's a lot of people tell me, okay. There's some unpopular opinions of my decision to do this while you clean. That's probably the last thing I'm going to discuss here. Oh, actually, there's some requests. Come here. Yeah, that was a resounding no. There was a couple other things. The two other things we were going to talk about. I guess the last thing on my list here I was going to talk about was Houston. Is Houston for real? Can they compete? And we'll do a really quick look at that. The answer is probably no. Like, are they for real? Yeah, I think we covered that on the last podcast. That they're incredibly talented. Yes, smart. Yeah. Okay, now they're starting to shit on me over this. Are they talented? Yes. The players that have reached the majors are clearly ready for it, right? Darjin Kawawe has been great for the last couple of years. He's been there as a leadoff table setter guy. Bill L.A. is a guy that we've all known as talented to this point. Richard Fowler's never really been in question. Eddie Rodondo's been a guy that maybe as not as talented as he's been to date. 341 with 13 home runs. It's a little ridiculous. Patrick Leonard's playing better than he should be, maybe. Xiaoqi Feng is better than he's supposed to be. Will Rainey's pitching a little below. Look, we can go through every player on the Astros roster, and maybe we'll just do a one-on-one podcast with me and Matt where I dissect the Astros. He's probably the only person interested in that to that level. But the Astros are exactly where you thought they'd be. They're a 500 club in a division that possesses three teams that are probably three of the better ones, three of the top six in the American League, which is the better division. So I think there's three of the top 12 teams in baseball. They have pieces coming up that can be very interesting. Ron Winterhalter is probably another 30 months away from seeing major league exposure regularly. Tim James had a quick spot start and then went back down to AAA. Aaron White clearly is ready. Mickey Moniak probably makes a jump to AAA at some point this year. I did change a poop diaper earlier. Thank you for asking. What are you doing? So is Houston for real? No, they're not for real this year, but they are for real long term. And I think Houston and Arizona are probably the future of this league. As early as 2020, maybe for Arizona, and as early as 2021. And I don't mean them being a winning team. I think the Astros will be a winning team this year, and I think they'll be a winning team next year. I think 2021 is when they have a shot at really taking the division title. That's probably the end of it. We could talk all night about a bunch of other things, but that's probably enough for now. It's about 50 minutes. yeah, that's all I got. Thanks, Megan. Anything? No, still no. Okay, Megan doesn't want to talk. That's everything. Thanks.